Hi, Year 5. We are starting our new unit for English. It's all about myths and legends, or is it? Let's have a look at the first question in my in these slides. So, what is dark magic? Have you read any books that include dark magic? What kind of books? Can you remember the titles? Or have you heard a story about dark magic? What do you think? Would you be brave enough to defeat dark magic? Let's remember that dark magic is not that kind of magic that brings something positive. So we're not talking about happy magic unicorns and rainbows and stuff like that. But it's actually when evil needs to be defeated. So your first task today is to actually jot down a little list with between 3 and 5 stories that you have read, and quickly write the plot of these stories, and potentially the message that these stories were trying to send. We are talking again about stories that included dark magic, or at least evil magic. Are there any particular features that you could identify between them, in common between them? So, if you're struggling with this, in case you are not a big fan of reading books with this particular kind of feature, you can maybe use movies. Okay, ideally, if it's a movie that is based on a book, is even better than just a movie. Okay, so if you could just do this activity between 3 and 5, it will be brilliant. Again, we need to identify also the features that they have in common. Okay, now if you are struggling to identify the features, you can use these questions here. So who are the characters? Where is the story based? So do they have that in common, for example? How is the setting and the atmosphere that is created in a story? Is there a villain? Is there what is the thing that is representing the evil? Is it somebody? Is it just an entity? Do we have a quest there? Or the characters, are they, for example, humans or animals? Okay, so these are some of the questions that could help you to identify features that these stories that you have used in your list have in common. Now, your second task is, without looking it up, after you have created this list, can you actually tell us what kind of story you were talking about? Okay, now I just mentioned that our new theme is myths and legends. So obviously we have that kind of stories in our head, in our mind. And I put a little short list of what kind of stories there could be. For example, myths, legend, fairy tales, or sometimes they'll talk, we call them folk tales or fables. Okay, now something else that you can use to help you in terms of features and plots that they could have things in common. I have included here a list of what they could be. So, for example, are they all overcoming a monster? Or is it rags to riches? So, somebody that is actually poor and then becomes rich or famous or successful? Or the quest, going against something in a longer journey? A voyage and return, for example, if you go into a particular magical world and then you come back. Comedy and tragedy is something that we tend not to really see much, but they are very much Shakespearean. So it could be that you have read stories about that. And rebirth. So, for example, Christmas Carol is one of these books where somebody somehow is born again like another person. There's a change in you. Okay, now I have put these different type of stories here as well to remind you of what they are. So, as I said, this is our first lesson to introduce our theme. So, and as I said earlier, your task is to write a list between 3 and 5 stories that you have read about, and quickly write the plot of the story. So nothing too long, but just briefly the plot of what the story was about, the characters, and if there was any quest, and what was the evil that they needed to fight. Again, you can use a movie if you are struggling to find titles of books, and or maybe a stories that you've been told, but obviously something famous, because if it's something that you're mom invented, I wouldn't be able to recognize it. Sorry about that. And then after that, you need to jot down if there are any particular features in common. And your challenge is to actually identify what kind of stories this could be. So, for example, do you think you're talking about legend? Do you think we're talking about myth? Or is it a fable? Okay, make sure that when you write down what kind of stories you think they are, you use the dive deeper task. Sort of a note in your book. Also, please, please, please do not look it up. It's just something for us to know where you're at with your knowledge. So please, 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 if you're not sure, don't put it there. You can just write, I'm not quite sure, or maybe have an educated guess if you have a vague idea what it could be, but please don't look it up because this is something that we're going to find out next time together. I hope you have fun thinking about all the books that you have read, and see you next time. Bye, Year 5.